Malcolm Gladwell, Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know. Dive into the world of Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, a compelling exploration of how our assumptions and instincts often lead us astray when encountering people we do not know. This book summary delves into concepts like transparency, the default to truth theory, and alcohol-induced myopia, shedding light on the mistakes we commit when engaging with strangers. By looking at research studies and real-life cases spanning from judges making bail decisions to high-profile criminal cases, this summary will help you better understand the complexities of human interactions and potentially transform the way you approach strangers.
How our biases affect judgment. A bail judge's experience shows we overestimate our ability to judge people from appearances, leading to unfavorable outcomes, and psychologist Emily Pronin's experiment supports this finding. Reading defendants' files is just one task out of many responsibilities that come with being a bail judge in New York State. However, it is also essential to talk to and look at defendants in the eye, as a file cannot reveal everything about them. Unfortunately, a study conducted by Harvard economist Sendhil Mullainathan in 2017 found that judges fared worse than machines in assessing who should receive bail. The defendants released by judges were found to be 25% more likely to commit a crime out on bail than those selected by a computer AI with the same information as the judges. The experiment suggests that judges overestimate their ability to evaluate strangers based on appearances and conversations. This overestimation is something we all share when it comes to judging others' characters based on flimsy evidence. Psychologist Emily Pronin's research, conducted in 2001, supports this observation. Pronin asked a group of people to fill in the missing letters in words like GL__ or __tr. People subsequently analyzed what their word choices indicated about them and mostly concluded that their choices were meaningless. However, when they saw lists completed by others, the group quickly read into the stranger's choices. For instance, they concluded that someone was goal-oriented based on their word choices, while another was apparently tired. This research suggests that we judge people we don't know at all based on a tiny piece of information. In conclusion, both experiments show that appearance-based character judgments lead to negative outcomes, which is particularly relevant in the criminal justice system, where bail judges heavily rely on their ability to evaluate defendants. The art of deception. Ana Montes, a model employee at the Defense Intelligence Agency, was also a spy for Cuba who leaked classified U.S. defense and intelligence information. The book discusses the psychology of deception, how people default to the truth, assuming truthfulness until there is overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The challenge for investigators is to identify the absolute trigger to tip from suspicion to disbelief. Psychologist Tim Levine conducted an experiment where on average, people can only identify liars correctly 54% of the time, including CIA officers, therapists, judges, and police officers. Our default belief in people's honesty blinds us to the truth, making us vulnerable to falling for deceit. Unmasking fraud. The importance of skepticism. The book recounts how Harry Markopolos was the only one who was able to see through Bernie Madoff's $60 billion fraudulent scheme, and how his background in fraud investigation made him uniquely qualified. Markopolos warned the authorities several times but faced several obstacles in his quest to stop Madoff's criminal activity. Despite the significance of his efforts, the book suggests that spotting deception daily is somewhat unnecessary as deception in everyday life is uncommon. An overall message of the book is that the truth is still the default setting in society. The deceptive facade of facial expressions. The book's summary deconstructs the commonly held belief that facial expressions reliably communicate our emotions. Many of us grow up learning folk psychology, where media representations of emotions influence our perception. However, research proves that people have little control over how their faces express emotions. Subconsciously, many resort to adjusting their facial expressions to communicate the desired feeling. The transparency of the performances of friends contrasts significantly with real-life experience, where genuine emotions are often concealed or suppressed. The book presents a critical and engaging perspective on how our belief in facial expressions can have profound consequences. The problem with transparency. In the book, the author analyzes the case of Amanda Knox, who was wrongfully accused of murdering her roommate, to show how the police's preconceived notion and interpretation of behavior can lead to wrongful accusations. The police suspected Knox because she did not behave the way they expected her to after the murder. The author argues that this is not a reliable way to judge someone's guilt, as people have different ways of coping with stress and grief. Using the example of Nervous Nelly in Tim Levine's videos, the author shows that behavior is not always an indicator of truthfulness. Therefore, the author concludes that transparency is not a reliable method of determining guilt, and we should not jump to conclusions based on it. A murky situation. On the night of January 18, 2015, a freshman named Brock Turner sexually assaulted an unconscious woman outside a fraternity house at Stanford University. Such encounters are alarmingly common. The author argues that sexual consent is often unclear, even before alcohol enters the mix. A 2015 survey by The Washington Post revealed that there is no true consensus on what constitutes sexual consent. Add alcohol to the equation, and the situation becomes even murkier. Alcohol causes people to become short-sighted, ignoring long-term consequences. Consequently, people lose their inhibitions and engage in behavior they wouldn't have sober. The power of alcohol-induced myopia is poorly understood. A poll conducted by The Washington Post showed that few people believe that reducing alcohol intake or placing stronger restrictions on its availability on campus would effectively reduce sexual assault. However, the author believes that we should both reduce alcohol consumption and teach men to respect women. The victim of Brock Turner's assault argued that focusing on campus drinking culture was wrong. However, the author disagrees, stating that we cannot expect people to be honest and clear in a social environment if they are drunk. Sandra Bland and police assumptions. Sandra Bland's tragic encounter with a Texas state trooper highlights the dangers of police defaulting to assumptions. When pulled over for a minor traffic violation, Bland's agitation was misinterpreted as a threat to the officer's safety. The author argues that Encinia's assumption of truth was flawed and that transparency can be misleading. This situation serves as a reminder to question assumptions and to recognize that we may not know how to communicate with strangers effectively.
As we reach the end of this enlightening journey through talking to strangers, we are reminded of the challenges we face when interacting with people we don't know. Our innate assumptions, such as transparency and default to truth, often cause us to misjudge others' intentions, with occasionally disastrous consequences. With thought-provoking case studies and a wealth of research, Gladwell highlights the importance of refining our ability to communicate with strangers and adopting a more discerning attitude. By recognizing the limitations of our instincts and resisting the urge to rely on stereotypes and hasty judgments, we can foster an environment that allows for more accurate and empathetic understanding of those we encounter.